Today, I was thinking about some older games that had that one insane feature, something that was seriously pushing consoles and PCs to their absolute limits back when they came out, and it got me wondering what happened to that. So in this video, I'm looking at games that went all in on physics, but also games that push boundaries in completely different ways, stuff that felt experimental, ambitious, sometimes even a little ahead of its time. We still don't have modern games that do what this game did with destruction physics. Like, it's actually kind of embarrassing when you think about it. So Red Faction Guerrilla, it's a third-person shooter set on Mars, and you're part of this rebellion against the EDF, the Earth Defense Force. And like, the world of this game, made in GeoMod 2.0 engine, is where the meat and potatoes of this game is. Because what Volition did with this game is they created this destruction system where like every single building, every structure in the game can be completely demolished piece by piece. And I'm not talking about like scripted destruction where you hit a wall and it crumbles in the exact same way every time. I'm talking about actual structural physics, where if you remove a support beam, the building will collapse realistically based on actual physics. Like, you can strategically take out the right supports and watch an entire building pancake in on itself. Or you can just go ham with the sledgehammer and tear through walls and watch the upper floors start to sag and buckle before they come crashing down. And the sledgehammer in this game is still one of the most satisfying weapons in any video game I've ever played. Like, you swing this thing and you just see walls explode into chunks, support beams bend and snap, and there's this weight to it, this impact that just feels so good. You're physically dismantling the entire game world with your hands, and every swing really matters because the buildings react differently depending on where you hit them. Like, I remember there was this mission, right, where I had to take down this EDF building, and instead of just running in guns blazing, I circled around the back, found the main support columns, and I just methodically took them out one by one with remote charges. And I'm watching the building start to lean, start to groan, and then it just collapses in this cloud of dust and debris. And the thing is, I could have done that mission 100 different ways. I could have driven a truck through the front, you could have used the arc welder to cut through supports, could have just gone full caveman mode with the sledgehammer. The game gives you all these tools and this physics system that actually responds to how you use them. And here's the thing that really gets to me, is that like, this is a 2009 game. Shit's over like 17 years old, and I can count on one hand the number of modern games that even attempt this level of destruction physics. You play something like, I don't know, any modern third-person shooter, and yeah, maybe you can blow up a barrel or knock down a specific wall that the developers decided could be destroyed, but it's also scripted, so predetermined. You're not actually affecting the world in any meaningful way. But in Red Faction Guerrilla, you could look at any building and think, I'm gonna destroy that, and then you actually could. The entire structure is gone. I also love how the game made destruction tactical in combat. Like, you're fighting EDF soldiers and they're taking cover behind a wall, so you just smash through the wall with your hammer and now they have no cover. Or you're being chased and you collapse a building behind you to block their path. Or you're pinned down, so you literally just demolish the building you're in and escape through the rubble. The physics engine created all these emergent gameplay moments that the developers probably didn't even fully anticipate. Now, don't get me wrong, the game wasn't perfect. Like, the shooting mechanics were kind of standard, a little stiff even for 2009. The story was pretty generic rebellion stuff. The open world of Mars was kind of empty and brown and samey in a lot of places. And yeah, sometimes the physics would glitch out and you'd get a weird ragdoll moment, or a piece of debris would fly off in a strange direction. But those little jank moments didn't matter because the core destruction system was so solid and just satisfying as hell. Portal is like how physics can be the entire foundation of a game, right? This game came out in 2007 as part of the Orange Box, and Valve just casually dropped what is probably one of the smartest uses of physics in any game ever made. And it was like a little bonus game bundled with Half-Life 2 Episode 2 and Team Fortress 2, and it ended up being the thing everyone talked about. So the concept is deceptively simple, right? You have a portal gun, you shoot one portal on a surface, you shoot another portal on a different surface, and you can walk through one and come out the other. Cool, but what makes Portal absolutely genius from a physics standpoint is that it's not just about connecting 2 points in space, it's about velocity. It's about that one phrase GLaDOS tells you, speedy thing goes in, speedy thing comes out.
You did it.
And that right there basically sums up the core idea, because what Valve did was create a system where your speed is preserved as you move through portals, and only the direction changes based on how the portals are placed. So if you fall from a great height and build up speed, then go through a portal on the floor and come out of one on a wall, you'll fly out at that same speed, just redirected. You're essentially turning downward motion into forward motion. And that is such a simple idea, but the way the game builds on it is brilliant. It lets you use gravity as a tool, building up speed by falling, then redirecting that speed wherever you need it through portal placement. Like, I remember the first time I understood the whole flinging mechanic. You place a portal on the floor beneath you, another one high up on a wall, and you just drop in, and suddenly you're launched across a massive gap. And your brain has to adjust to the idea that you're not just teleporting, you're carrying your speed with you. You're turning falling into flying. And the game teaches you this so naturally. Early puzzles are just about understanding how portals connect space. But then it slowly introduces situations where you need to think about speed, angles, and timing. You're figuring out how much height you need, how fast you'll come out, and where that motion will take you. But the game also gives you objects to work with, like the weighted companion cube. And yeah, everyone remembers it for the meme, but mechanically, it's just a really clean physics object. You can drop it, throw it, send it through portals, and it follows the same rules you do. So you'll get puzzles where you build up speed with a cube and use it to hit switches or block hazards mid-air. And for me, the best thing about Portal is how much it trusts the player. It doesn't stop and explain the physics to you, it just lets you experience it.
Get your leader, explain yourself.
Half-Life 2, this game came out in 2004 and basically taught an entire generation of gamers what actual physics in a shooter could look like. Like, before this, you'd shoot a barrel and maybe it would explode. That's it. But Valve took the source engine and said, what if everything actually behaves like real objects? And the gravity gun. This is still one of the most satisfying weapons ever made. You can pick up just about anything. Barrels, saw blades, radiators, toilets, explosive barrels, even dead bodies, and you can manipulate them, throw them, use them as shields. And the physics are so good that you can do things like stack objects to climb up to places. You can wedge a barrel under a door to keep it open. You can throw a saw blade and watch it slice through multiple enemies because it's actually calculating the physics of that blade spinning through the air. There's that iconic Ravenholm section where you're low on ammo and the game is basically forcing you to get creative with physics. You're using the gravity gun to launch saw blades at zombies. You're dropping cars on them. You're setting up explosive barrels as traps. And it all works because the physics engine is actually simulating this stuff in real time, not faking it with scripted events. And like the environmental puzzles where you have to use seesaws to launch objects, or you're stacking cinder blocks to make a path across water, or you're using floating barrels to get past barnacles. All of that requires you to understand weight, buoyancy, leverage. The game is teaching you physics without being a physics textbook. Even the combat encounters used physics in smart ways. Enemies would take cover behind objects that you could move or destroy. Combine soldiers would flip tables for cover, and you could just gravity gun that table right back at them. The game made the environment part of the fight in ways that most modern shooters still don't even attempt, and this is 2004, dude, over 20 years ago, and I still play modern FPS games where objects are just glued to the ground, the environment is completely static. Half-Life 2 set this bar where everything felt interactive and real, and most games just decided that was too hard and gave up. The vehicle sections too, the airboat and the buggy, they had really satisfying physics, weight, momentum, how they'd bounce over terrain. It wasn't just on-rails driving, you could actually feel the suspension working, feel the vehicle react to the environment. Now, we literally cannot talk about older games humiliating modern releases without talking about the big boy, Crysis. I mean, it's 2007. The can it run Crysis joke has been beaten to death, but I feel like a lot of people forget exactly why this game melted our giant chunky PC rigs back in the day. It wasn't purely the lighting or the sheer size of the island, it also really was that physics. Like, from simple stuff to the really complex simulations, Crytek was just doing something completely different here. You walk into a jungle in a new game, right? It looks completely photorealistic, but you shoot a massive machine gun at a palm tree and you get like a tiny little 2D spark texture and a bullet hole decal. You do that in Crysis, the tree physically splinters exactly where your bullets hit, and then the top half of that tree obeys gravity, falls over, rolls down a hill, and can actually completely crush an enemy soldier who happens to be standing at the bottom. The fact that the game is calculating all of that on the fly is just crazy to me. The way you can manipulate the sandbox in Crysis really is one of the things that I love the most. You're wearing this incredibly powerful nano suit. You can grab a guy by the throat, turn on maximum strength, and just absolutely launch him into a corrugated metal shack. And the shack doesn't just play a pre-baked scripted animation. The physics engine actually calculates the impact, the metal bends, the supports snap, and the whole roof collapses dynamically based on where you threw him. Every single piece of debris becomes an active physical object tumbling around the environment. You can pick up boxes, barrels, random chickens running around, and just use the physics to solve your problems or cause absolute chaos. Now, of course, Crysis is definitely a little janky sometimes by today's slick movement standards, and obviously they weren't going for a hyperlinear cinematic experience, but it's a completely satisfying, ridiculous sandbox. When you are the person there doing every single individual action and watching the world literally break apart in your hands, that's when you realize, like, wow, this game just does a really good job of simulating a reactive world. I played it again a while back, and I'm probably gonna think about its destruction whenever I play another first-person game. Let's be honest for a second. If you were walking through a shady neighborhood at night, you wouldn't pull out your wallet and hold it above your head for everyone to see. That's just common sense. You know that is inviting trouble. But people do the digital equivalent of that every single day. When you connect to public Wi-Fi at a coffee shop, an airport, or a hotel without protection, you are basically flashing your digital wallet to the entire room. Most public networks are completely unencrypted. That means if a hacker is on that same network, which is way easier than you think, they can see exactly what you are doing. They can intercept your credit card numbers, your passwords, and your private emails. You aren't just browsing, you are broadcasting your personal life to anyone listening. This is exactly why I don't go online without ExpressVPN. It stops that exposure instantly. When you turn it on, ExpressVPN creates an encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. It scrambles your data so that even if someone is trying to snoop, all they see is gibberish. It's not just about security though, it's about privacy. It hides your real IP address so websites and trackers can't build a profile on you based on your location. And here's the thing nobody talks about. Every time you type something into an AI chatbot, a medical question, a financial situation, that data doesn't just disappear. It gets stored, potentially used to build a profile on you. You're basically handing a stranger your diary and hoping they're trustworthy. That's why I've been using Express AI. It's a private AI assistant that doesn't log or learn from your queries, so you can actually ask the stuff you'd never want attached to your name. Same power, none of the data creep. And that's just one piece of what Express has been building. They've also got Express Mailguard, which I use every time a site asks for my email, and I know it's just going to spam me. It gives you a burner address so your real inbox stays clean, and Express keys for passwords, because if you're still doing the forgot password loop of doom every other week, you need this in your life. Stop acting like an NPC with zero defense stats. Use my link expressvpn.com/pixdragon to get 4 extra months of ExpressVPN, or scan the QR code on screen right now to get those 4 extra months and start browsing safely. Far Cry 2. So let's piss all over the screen because I am talking about Far Cry 2 with that brown filter which game devs loved for some apparent reason, but FC2, and it is absolutely legendary when we talk about this specific topic. When you look at the games Ubisoft puts out today, they are gorgeous. Look, you can't deny that. Ubisoft knows how to make good ass looking pixel worlds, even though most of their story sucks ass. God, I wonder when they'll improve it. But anyway, we are talking about Far Cry 2. So the actual physical interactions in Far Cry 2 from way back in 2008 are still some of the best. So the biggest piece of the puzzle here is the fire propagation. It really is insane. Far Cry 2 was doing things with fire that games today still don't even try to replicate. If you set fire to dry vegetation, it won't just sit there in a pre-baked circle, it actually spreads dynamically based on the direction the wind is blowing. You can use a Molotov or a flare gun in the dry savanna, and the fire will sweep rapidly through the grass and bushes. It even reacts logically to the environment. The jungle is harder to burn because of the moisture, and if it rains, the environment physically takes time to dry out before it can catch fire easily again. You can literally plan an attack on an enemy camp by starting a fire upwind, flushing out the guards, and watching the AI completely panic and forget about you to save their own skin. In newer Far Cry games, the fire just kind of stops after a few meters, or feels totally static by comparison. there's also so much more to the physics and the physical grit of this game. The environmental destruction still completely holds up. If you get into a massive firefight, you can literally shoot individual leaves off the trees. If you throw a grenade or fire a rocket, thin trees will physically snap from the shockwave and branches will come crashing down to the ground. You can even drive a jeep fast through the brush and physically bend or cut down the bushes in your path. It makes the world feel incredibly reactive. And then there's the physical toll the world takes on you and your gear. Your weapons degrade and physically jam on you in the middle of a chaotic shootout, forcing you to scramble for cover and pick up a dropped gun from an enemy. The enemies themselves are super persistent too. If you shoot a guy in the leg, he doesn't just instantly die or brush it off, he falls down and physically crawls. It's definitely a little janky in places, and managing malaria pills or dealing with instantly respawning guard posts can be incredibly frustrating. But I just walked away really appreciating the sheer ambition of it. The unpredictability of the physics, like a fire accidentally spreading to a propane tank that violently launches right back at your face, just hooks me. It's a gritty, chunky, and also piss filter ugly, unforgiving sandbox that actually demands you pay attention to the world around you. S.T.A.L.K.E.R Shadow of Chernobyl is an absolute freak of nature when it comes to game systems interacting with each other. When you play a modern open world shooter, the AI usually just waits around and camps until you show up to shoot them, and the physics are mostly just window dressing. But S.T.A.L.K.E.R Shadow of Chernobyl from all the way back in 2007 uses this custom X-ray engine that handles ballistics, AI, and environmental physics in a way that puts modern games to shame. The gunplay is a huge part of this. They implemented a true ballistic model where bullets aren't just invisible lasers instantly hitting their target. The game calculates bullet mass, speed of flight, and environment resistance on the fly. You have actual bullet drop and ricochets that can bounce off surfaces and hit enemies. Bullets accurately penetrate different materials based on their properties, which means hiding behind thin cover during a firefight is a terrible idea. And enemies physically react depending on exactly where they get hit. Shoot a guy in the torso and he drops to the ground squirming in pain. It makes every encounter feel incredibly lethal and unpredictable. And then there's the A-Life AI system, which is honestly the star of the show. The NPCs in this game are largely autonomous and non-scripted. They scavenge for loot, eat, find shelter, and dynamically react to the environment without you ever having to be near them. If you snipe a guy at an army post and hide, his buddies will spot the body, raise the alarm, seek cover, and actively try to outflank you as a team. You can literally just sit back and watch a pack of wild dogs ambush a group of wandering stalkers, and the engine is calculating all of that chaos in real time. But my favorite part has to be the anomalies. The zone is littered with these dangerous, invisible pockets of corrupted physics. If an AI enemy or a mutant accidentally wanders into one, you will physically see them get violently sucked into the air and crushed, or blasted by an electrical shock. You can even use these anomalies strategically in combat, throwing metal bolts to find a safe path for yourself and luring enemies right into a localized physics trap. Actually, I think 2007 was just an absolutely stupid year for games pushing boundaries. One of my favorite games of all time, Uncharted, also came out in the same year, and I think it still looks fucking gorgeous and had no piss filter, but we'll talk about console games in some other videos. So as for S.T.A.L.K.E.R Shadow of Chernobyl, I like games that focus on making the world feel dangerous and unpredictable. There's something about that continued, ridiculous perseverance, right? You are carefully navigating this incredibly hostile landscape, watching the physics engine organically calculate a pack of wild dogs getting sucked into a localized gravity vortex, while you're hiding behind a rusted out car. I walked away from S.T.A.L.K.E.R just completely hooked by that feeling of dread and triumph. Going back to Just Cause 2 specifically for this video, it is straight up crazy how much this game's physics engine just completely dunks on so many modern open world games. Just Cause 2 just hands you this ridiculous sandbox of momentum and gravity and says, go break stuff. And you play as Rico Rodriguez, you're on this massive island of Panau, and the whole setup is pretty simple. But the real star, the thing that makes this a physics playground that humiliates modern releases, is the grappling hook and the tether system. It is definitely a little janky by today's standards, like the driving feels like you're steering a refrigerator on ice sometimes, but the way the physics interact with the world is just something else. You have this dual tether, right? And it means you can attach any two physical objects in the game world together, and the game engine just has to deal with it, and it does. You can tether a pursuing enemy jeep to the ground, and when the tether goes taut, the physics engine calculates the momentum and physically launches that jeep flipping end over end into the jungle. It's not a canned animation, it's raw math happening in real time, and your brain starts to think like this crazy action movie director, like you're looking for the tiniest little opportunities to mess with the physics. physics. I found myself tethering a guard to a propane tank, shooting the tank, and watching the gas leak physically propel the tank into the sky, dragging the ragdolling guard up with it. Modern games just don't let you do things like that. They're so worried about you breaking the game that they restrict you. But Just Cause 2 wants you to break it. Even just getting around the map relies entirely on physics and momentum. You're using your parachute, but then you're using the grappling hook on the ground to physically pull yourself forward, slingshotting Rico to build speed. You're constantly managing drag, gravity, and acceleration. You catch an updraft, you pull yourself to a mountain peak, and then free fall down. It really depends on where you're grabbing and how you're utilizing the physical space around you. When you do some of the more challenging stunts, like when you have to hijack a helicopter mid-air, you're tethering enemies to the rotor blades, dropping C4, and bailing out while the whole thing crashes into a destructible radio tower that actually crumples and collapses dynamically based on where it took the hit. It just feels and looks incredible. It's that continued, ridiculous, almost thick-headed, stupid perseverance of trying to pull off the craziest stunt imaginable. And the physics engine never says no. It just calculates the chaos and lets it happen. I remember a shit ton of hours playing Just Cause 2 around the time it came out. I don't know, this game just really worked for me. The story was whatever. It's super cheesy B-movie action stuff. I wonder what a Just Cause game with good story would look like, but we'll probably never see that. The story is the journey of the physics. It's those little micro moments, like accidentally tethering your own plane to a tree and ripping the wing off during takeoff. That to me is a big part of the fun. It's just a really good, immensely satisfying, chaotic physics mechanic that you slowly learn the ins and outs of over the course of the game. GTA 4, the physics are like legitimately better, more satisfying, immersive than not just GTA 5, but like a ton of modern open world games that have come out since. And that's wild to me because we're talking about a game that's like, what, 18 years old at this point? But like when you go back and play it, or if you've never played it and you jump in for the first time, you immediately feel the difference. So let's talk about what Rockstar did here. They implemented this thing called the Euphoria engine, which was like this procedural animation and physics system. And what that means in practice is that every single time you shoot somebody, every time you hit them with a car, every time they trip and fall, it's different. Like the ragdoll physics aren't canned animations, they're actual physical simulations of a body reacting to force and momentum and gravity. And dude, it is so satisfying. Like you can shoot a guy running down the street in the leg and he doesn't just play a stumble animation and fall over, he like genuinely tries to catch himself. His arms flail out, he grabs for a wall or a railing, maybe he gets his balance back for a second before he collapses. Or like you clip someone with your car at like 30 miles per hour and they ragdoll over the hood in this completely unique way that feels weighted and real. And that's the thing that really gets me about GTA 4's physics. Everything has weight. The cars feel heavy. Like when you're driving in GTA 4, you feel like you're piloting this 2-ton hunk of metal that has actual mass and momentum. You can't just whip around corners at full speed like you're playing an arcade racer. You have to actually brake, you have to manage your speed, the suspension compresses and bounces, the car leans into turns, and if you hit a curb wrong or take a corner too fast, the car doesn't just magically stick to the road, it flips, it rolls, it tumbles in this completely believable way. I've had moments where I'm fleeing from the cops and I hit a bump at the wrong angle and my car just goes completely sideways and barrel rolls like 3 times down the street. And every single rotation feels earned, feels like actual physics working. The damage modeling too, man. You shoot out someone's tires in GTA 4 and the car doesn't just play a deflate animation, the tire actually blows out, the rim sparks on the pavement. The handling completely changes because you're now driving on 3 wheels and a metal rim. Crash into a wall at high speed and the hood crumples, the bumper falls off, doors get ripped off their hinges if you sideswipe something hard enough, the windshield cracks realistically, and all of this affects how the car drives. A car with a destroyed front end handles differently than a pristine one because the weight distribution is changed. The aerodynamics are shot. And like, okay, I know GTA 4 gets a lot of flack for the driving feeling too heavy, too boaty, whatever. People complained about it. And yeah, compared to GTA 5 where the cars handle like they're on rails and it gets boring so quick, GTA 4's driving takes getting used to. Now, there are flaws, sure. Sometimes the ragdolls get a little too weird. Nico will flail in weird ways. The driving can feel overly sensitive in certain situations. The physics can occasionally glitch out in funny ways. But those are the quirks of a system that's actually trying to simulate reality. And I'll take that any day over the sterile, safe physics systems we see in a lot of modern games. And then obviously the game runs like absolute dog shit on most PCs until you install and tinker with mods created by the community. Crazy how lazy Rockstar has become. I've talked about Remedy a lot on this channel before. Their storytelling with Quantum Break, Alan Wake, and Control, but man, we've got to talk about Max Payne 2 now. When you look at a lot of modern third-person shooters today, environments can feel pretty static. You shoot a wall, maybe you get a spark. You shoot a bad guy, and you get one of a few canned animations. You know the drill. But Max Payne 2, a game from 2003, feels different. This was around the early days of the Havoc physics engine, and Remedy used it in a way that really added to the combat. On paper, it's simple. You're playing as Max in a gritty noir story, shooting guys in slow motion. But the moment you hit that shoot dodge and dive through the air in bullet time, everything starts to feel more dynamic. You throw a grenade into a room, time slows down, and you see enemies react physically to the blast, getting knocked around and colliding with parts of the environment. Objects like boxes and props can get pushed around too, adding to that sense of chaos. It's not a full simulation, but it's enough to make each fight feel a bit different. And the ragdolls? Yeah, they still stand out. When you blast a guy with a shotgun, he doesn't just play a preset animation. His body reacts based on the hit, sometimes stumbling, collapsing, or tumbling downstairs in ways that feel unscripted. It can look a little janky at times, sure, but a lot of the time it just feels really satisfying. What this does is change how you approach fights. You're not just shooting enemies, you start noticing the environment more. You might take advantage of positioning or use bullet time to control how a fight plays out, creating those small, unscripted moments that feel unique to your playthrough. There is a story here too, and it's that classic dramatic noir style Remedy is known for, presented through comic panels and internal monologue. But for me, a big part of the experience is the flow of combat. Walking into a room, getting through a tough fight, and seeing the aftermath with bodies in different positions and objects scattered around in ways that weren't fully scripted. It all adds up to a really satisfying action game, not because it's a full physics sandbox, but because it blends tight shooting, bullet time, and reactive environments in a way that still holds up surprisingly well. So, Oblivion. When we talk about games that really made you feel a massive generational leap, Oblivion is right up there. It came out in 2006 and was an absolute monster for its time. Bethesda was using the Gamebryo engine alongside Havoc physics, and it made the world of Cyrodiil feel way more interactive than a lot of the more controlled, static worlds we see today. From small details to actual gameplay, the physics added a huge layer of immersion. If you shoot an arrow at a wooden surface or a shield, it actually sticks into it instead of just disappearing. And then there's the grab system. You can walk into a tavern, pick up an apple, a plate, or a giant wheel of cheese, and physically move it around the world. You can carefully place objects, stack them, or just throw everything into a pile and mess with it. The game also uses physics in its traps. You step on a pressure plate, and a massive spiked mace swings down on a chain, hitting anything in its path. And it doesn't just stop there, it keeps swinging, carrying momentum, so you actually have to time your movement and avoid it. Of course, it can get pretty janky. You've got classic moments where a body glitches out or an object starts spinning like crazy, but honestly, that unpredictability is part of what makes it feel alive. When you really get into it, that level of interaction makes the world feel like a proper sandbox. You're not just moving through it, you can actually mess with it.
Soldiers of Cyrodiil, the Empire will stand or fall by what we do here today. We must kill whatever comes out of that gate. Do you stand with me?
I'm a massive fan of the Hitman games. I love stealth in general, but when you look at a lot of modern stealth games or even action games that just tack stealth on as an afterthought, everything can feel kind of canned. You press a button for a takedown, it plays an animation, you move a body, and it just snaps into place. It's all very controlled. And then you go back to Hitman Blood Money and it feels different, not because it's doing anything insanely advanced by today's standards, but because of how ahead of its time it was when it released. You play as Agent 47, dropping into these sandbox levels, a suburban neighborhood, a Las Vegas casino, where the goal isn't just to eliminate targets, but to do it cleanly, creatively, and without being noticed. What made Blood Money stand out back then was how many systems it brought together. Disguises, suspicion, witness mechanics, accident kills, notoriety, everything fed into how you approached a mission. It wasn't just stealth or action, it was a full sandbox where you could experiment and improvise. When you take someone out, the body stays in the world and becomes your responsibility. You have to move it, hide it, and think about where it might be discovered. It's not a realistic weight simulation, but it's grounded enough to create tension. You feel vulnerable while dragging a body across a hallway, hoping no one turns the corner. The physics in ragdolls help sell that illusion. When someone falls downstairs or collapses over a railing, it can look messy and unscripted, sometimes even a bit janky, but that roughness is part of what makes encounters feel dynamic instead of pre-planned. But the real strength of the game isn't raw physics, it's the systems. Guards react to sounds, disguises affect how close you can get, and the level design supports multiple ways to approach every objective. You're constantly reading the situation, setting things up, and adapting on the fly. Even something simple like throwing a coin becomes a tool for manipulation. It's not simulating real-world acoustics, but it's consistent enough that you can rely on it to control enemy behavior and create openings. And when it all comes together, you get those moments where everything just clicks, where a hit looks like an accident, no one notices, and you walk out in your suit like nothing happened. That feeling is what made the game so memorable. Now, looking at something like Hitman 3, it's clear the series has evolved a lot. The modern games are more polished, more detailed, and far more advanced in terms of AI, level design, and overall systems, but Blood Money laid a lot of that groundwork. At the time, it was doing things most games weren't even attempting yet, and even now, you can still feel how solid that foundation is. Star Wars: The Force Unleashed. Modern Star Wars games are undeniably gorgeous, no question, but they can feel a bit more controlled in how you interact with the world. When you go back to The Force Unleashed, what stands out is just how ambitious its systems were, especially for 2008. LucasArts built the game around a combination of 3 major technologies: Havoc Physics Engine, Euphoria, and Digital Molecular Matter. And it's really the way these systems work together that gives the game its identity. First, there's Euphoria, which handles character reactions. In a lot of games, when you hit an enemy, they just play a preset animation. But here, if you lift a stormtrooper with the Force, he reacts in real time, flailing, trying to stabilize himself, sometimes reaching toward nearby objects. It's not completely unscripted, but it's dynamic enough that it feels different almost every time. Because you're playing as Starkiller, Darth Vader's secret apprentice, the game leans fully into that power fantasy. You're throwing enemies around, slamming them into walls, pulling objects across the environment. It's less about precision and more about controlled chaos. Now, it's definitely not perfect. Trying to run all of this on hardware at the time led to performance issues, and the game can feel a bit rough in places, but that ambition is what makes it stand out. Even if not everything is fully simulated, the combination of systems creates moments that feel unpredictable and alive in a way that a lot of games at the time weren't even attempting. It's one of those games where you can clearly see developers pushing the limits of what was possible, trying to blend physics, animation, and destruction into something bigger. And even now, going back to it, you can still feel how bold that approach was.